if you're willing to walk 10 miles with that thing, we'll meet you. We'll walk 5. We'll meet you halfway and help you with that. If you're willing to walk 1,000,000 fucking miles, we're going to walk 500,000 miles to get there. We are always willing to meet you at your ability to put the effort in. And that effort is in the gym, it's recovery, it's athlete IQ, it's paying attention to the podcast and the YouTube videos, all of that stuff. But what separates us beyond even all the other stuff that we put out there is the 3 of us will meet you halfway. We will get half of this work done for you so that you can show up and be the best athlete that you can be. And the earlier in the season that you join us, the better. You can always join us. Variance is always our guiding principle. We love GPP. Sherb's, the second biggest Kool-Aid drinker I've ever met in my whole life.
Who's the first?
Yeah, Luca.
Fair. That's fair. That's fair.
So misfitathletics.com, Monday, October 3rd, 2 weeks for free.
Sign up.
Sign up. Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into a very special edition podcast. If you've joined us recently, if you're newer to the podcast for the last few weeks, you've listened to us rant about different topics. You sort of have the gist of what the show is like. But every 7 weeks or so, we take a deep dive into the next phase or block of programming. We talk about what is coming, why we're programming that way, how to think about certain things, how to bias for certain weaknesses, all that good stuff. So I think it serves a few purposes. For coaches out there that are, trying to, take this programming and help other people with it, or trying to learn how to program themselves. If you think about athletes that are a bit more on the nerdy side that really want that proof of concept, but then there's also the other side where I think this motivates people a little bit. They hear about the changes. They don't sit there with pen and paper in the way that some people would and write down like, oh, we're doing this and this is the progression from that. But just knowing, sort of like watching a movie trailer or something like that, can get people excited, especially after, phase 1, which is, coming to an end right now. We're in retest week, was a doozy, and it always is a little bit special for people coming off of, summer off season, or competition prep type programming and back into this. So, hopefully this serves as a either an educational or an exciting podcast for you guys.
Yeah, I think it's beneficial for the CrossFit coaches out there that maybe have the desire at some point to maybe develop their own program or want to help athletes understand the program better, to kind of go through something like this and kind of see what it takes as a coach and programmer to really get through a program and make sure it makes sense from top to bottom, which is, I think, one of the things that we really pride ourselves on, but a lot of people maybe don't see that is an element to their programming that needs to be thought out if you're looking to have a successful program. It can't just be like variance so random every day, but like you take yourself on a journey, and whether or not you're training for the CrossFit Games or you're just looking to make people healthier, like you should have what should be the plan for this month, what's coming up the following month, the next quarter, and then the next year, kind of taking people on a journey, because that's how you set someone up to see success, by setting like breadcrumbs on the trail to kind of get you from point A to point B is an important part of what a programmer and coach needs to know when they're hoping to create change. Because if you don't know where you're going, you won't know where to start.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think it's important to keep in mind, like every 7 weeks that we do this, we're talking about a new 7-week block of training, but try not to think about the program in just 7-week chunks. Obviously you zoom in on that 7-week chunk, but this is it's part of a larger picture, kind of that roadmap that you're talking about, to take you from end of the CrossFit Games, kind of the start of the off season, all the way through the actual competitive season. And a little bit of bragging here. I don't know quite enough about the other programs that are out there, but I am extremely confident that there are no other programs that are as well thought out as this one, nor are there any other programs that are taking athletes from raw beginner walk in off the street. We were talking about this the other day. We've got at least 4 of them that we know of who go from I've never done CrossFit before to I am a CrossFit Games athlete. A lot of the other programs out there, like It's nice to pluck athletes who already have built up kind of that baseline of competitive CrossFit experience, but there aren't that many programs out there, or frankly any. Go ahead, point one out to me if I'm mistaken, but that are taking athletes from zero to CrossFit games. So I'll happily brag about that and tout the program as the best available to anybody interested in competing in the sport of CrossFit.
And we've had similar success with athletes who take them up one notch, essentially, that we don't get to coach in person on a regular basis at our own affiliate, that have come to training camps and either been fringe regionals athletes, have never made it to regionals, that go to the CrossFit games. And that's a really good point to set up this podcast, because when you are going to certain programs who do one facet really well, which I think is one of the big differentiators between what we do and what other programs do, is maybe it's the right situation for you. You might go in and that thing that you're missing is right there. It could be community. It could be ethos. It could be, they're obsessed with movement efficiency or energy systems. They're really good at programming bitch work, or they've brought somebody in to do aerobic capacity. When you come into us, we are truly trying to find out what it is that's missing from what you're doing. And especially if we start remote coaching you, a lot of eggs go into that basket. So I think really the difference is just the ability as coaches and as programmers to take multiple steps back and see the entire picture. Whereas a lot of other people, again, they're coming in, they're working themselves into this massive machine. And it's like, if what they do really well is my weakness, then this could probably be a pretty good relationship.
Well, it's funny you say that. We actually have a member at our local affiliate who used to work with another one of the training programs. I'm not going to say who, but basically said their philosophy was, if you jump in and you are genetically predisposed to being a really high level athlete, this program will help augment that and take you there. But you have to assume, like you just said, that whatever they do really well is exactly what that athlete needs. And if it's not, they're stuck, which is one of the big proponents of why we do variable training system. Like, we try to educate you so you understand the nuts and bolts of how things go. And then you take that information and go, all right, I can see the entire week, especially if you're a complete member, I see the entire week. I see that there are these 5 things that I absolutely must do. Great. Now, do I need to do these 4 things because they're things that are typically my strengths? Maybe I don't right now. Maybe I'm in the part of the season where I need to be more focused on the things that I'm not very good at, and occasionally hit something that's like down the middle of the wheelhouse workout, so I can really push the intensity. But what separates us from other people, I think, is that variable training system, where now that you know the information of why we're doing it, you then get to make the best educated guess for, this is what I think is going to move the needle for me. And we try to have the same level of care for every category in our programming. It's not like, the lifting's really well thought out, but the metcons or whatever, or the skill work is really good, but the accessory doesn't make any sense. Like, we try to think through all of these things so that when you're going through the programming and selecting the pieces that are most appropriate for you, they're actually going to create that adaptation. So you're not left guessing, like, am I just one of those genetic freaks, or am I actually going to be able to make some progress here? And I would argue that everybody can make progress if you're on the right program with the right intent behind it.
Even if you are somebody who's like that, there's absolutely no substitution for the work that's required to be successful in the sport. And having a system that takes you, not only it's like, here's the daily exercise that you need to do. Find me another program that talks about something like morning movement. Find me another program that talks about the importance of sun exposure, stress relief, community building, the importance of like maffetone work in the construct of an entire week of programming. Like, it's all built into the program. And if you pay attention, there's absolutely an onus on you all, the listener, to try to absorb the information, apply it, get into the Discord channel. Again, like, how many programs do you get where there's direct access to the people who write the program and the athletes who follow it? Like, hi, hey, over here, look at me.
Very true. I want to take, Ted, maybe even look at the clock. I want to take 5 to 10 minutes tops. Oh, I know this guy over here.
Which one is it? 5 or 10 minutes or
5 to 10? 5 to 10.
Just fucking with you.
When we're at the fucking games and an athlete asks what time it is, I could be looking at a clock waiting, and Hunter tells them before I do, and it fucking...
Unless Xander's there, and then Xander beats both of us.
I've never been able to tell anybody what time it is. I'm just going to yell out a fucking fake number next time.
1 a.m.
What happened to you? Okay, so set the clock. I think it's really important to say, what information did you get from phase 1? How does that affect phase 2? How you choose pieces, what your goals are on certain things, whatever it is. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, even though you essentially don't get to retest because you have to deload next week for a marathon.
It's going to be easy. Who cares?
It's going to be easy. It's going to be fine. You're not going to be able to test the following week.
Phase 2 primer.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I feel great for phase 2.
It's Sunday too.
I'll be ready.
Monday, he's going to be ready Monday.
I'm ready.
He's going to do that C2 bite cube test.
1 rep max squat clean on Monday. Sure, get ready.
I'll get 1 1/4.
But you're the only one in this room that has, in a way, followed phase 1.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, there's correlation, phase 1 to Team Misfit, affiliate programming, that sort of thing. But what have you gotten out of it? What information can you think of that you would be able to use going into phase 2? And if you can't think of anything specific, I don't mind jumping in, but I just think it's unique now that there's someone sitting here that follows the program.
I think
and he sure follows the master's program primarily.
I think the thing that I've found to be the most helpful this phase, and something I haven't been doing for a really long time because I hadn't had any sort of competitive aspirations, was the recommitment to bitch work and having it be with a certain intent other than just like trying hard. Because I've always been someone who likes bitch work. That's like one of the things I'm quote unquote good at because it doesn't require a lot of skill and it's just like how hard you want to try. And that's like always been my bag since growing up playing sports. Was never like the most talented. It's just I'm willing to work. So it was really educational for me to kind of see how the phase has gone, where we've taken the time domains on like rowers, for example. One of the things I'm doing in particular because of my own personal issues with energy systems and capacities is that every piece that you have been doing as running, I've been doing as rowing, and then the exact opposite pieces that you've been doing running, I've been doing as rowing. So you basically flip-flop in those two things. And we've gone through the phase, and it started at like about 90 seconds, then it's gone to 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, then 4 minutes. So the thing that I think has been most beneficial for me is now I have effectively gears for each one of those domains that I now know I can put into play when it comes time to do a workout. Now, one thing that's constantly happening though is I'm guessing and rechecking. So you and I texted yesterday about the piece that was on the blog that I had I think it was the hatchet version maybe, but it was 5 rounds of that was a
fucking trap though. That workout, I mean, what are you supposed to do? You're going to put the push press down, and that's really not going to buy you much. That workout was.
I'll put the push press down. Don't tell me what to get.
So like one of the things that's been really important this phase is I've done workouts where I know I'm going to be running for 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is. So I go into that workout, and because of my MAV sessions, my heart rate, I have a pretty good indication, both looking at the data on the floor of my phone, seeing what my heart rate is, and going by feel and going, all right, this feels like the appropriate pace, and then learning very quickly that it was still a little too aggressive. So, comparing notes with Caroline, I asked her how it went for her, and obviously comparing to a games athlete, never really good for your self-esteem, but like it was good to kind of hear her say the same thing I thought as I got done with it, is that I effectively started too hot on the run. I thought like right around a 7-ish minute pace would be okay, where it would allow me to move methodically through burpees and still do the push press unbroken. And it turned out like that was fine for a round or two. And then I had overextended myself. And even in the 3-minute window when I was moving around, recovering, it wasn't enough time to then be able to do that same cadence on burpees. So where do I need to put a little bit more eggs in the basket? I've been running a bunch. Something like a burpee, as grading as running is, that's not going to happen until you get the quarterfinal or semifinal stage. You need to be good with a very basic movement like a burpee. So quickly made the adjustment of going from a 7-minute mile to a 7:40 mile to an 8 mile to an 8:15. The last round was like an 8:30. Yeah, exactly. So at the end, it wasn't a super incredible pace. Like someone watched me running. It's like, what is that guy doing? He looks like he's chilling over there. But the idea here is that I've taken the information of how I know my body's going to respond when doing things, and now I'm able to put it into a Metcon, which is the expression of why we do a lot of our bitch work pieces. It's both to create adaptation, but it's also data collection. So you can now take that information and make adjustments on the fly. So you don't just keep like ramming your head in the wall and go, how come it's not feeling any different? Like you're making breakthroughs on things. So for me, the thing that's been the biggest change is getting re-educated with like where my body is fitness wise in terms of my paces and things, and being okay with forgetting some of those older paces. Because there's times where I get on a machine and it feels too easy for the first round, but then as I get through the bulk of the volume, I quickly realized like, no, that was the correct assessment. And you're now getting more in tune with where you are currently in your fitness and what's going to allow you to maximize your fitness across every single round, instead of like setting the first couple and then just like limping home or crawling at the beginning and then only doing 2 hard rounds at the end. Like I'm able to be more consistent from start to finish. So that's what I would say is the biggest eye-opening piece that I can take from this phase, in addition to just like being more cognizant with pacing, because that's always been my issue in workouts is not pacing things correctly.
Don't just train and collect data. Don't just train and collect data. Train, collect data, use it. And I think people hit that wall of like, I've crossed a threshold. Phase 1's over. Phase 2 is here. These are different movements. I have to start over in this data collection. But as we've said on, half of the podcast before, stimulus is what we're chasing. We're not chasing movements. So we could write a workout that went exactly the same as what you just talked about with rowing and devil's press and deficit handstand push-ups or something. It wouldn't be that hard to create a similar stimulus, and drawing those connections is super important. And as you alluded to, if you are early in your journey with the athlete IQ, when you get to stare at a monitor, the information that you have, especially if you pair it with a heart rate monitor, is so incredible. It's exactly what you're doing. You know how you're feeling in that moment. It can be hard in CrossFit. So learn it on the machines first and then try to move it over. All right. 6 minutes. Not too bad. All right, Misfits, just a quick break to shout out our exclusive show sponsor, save you a little bit of money on one of the favorite products that I have ever developed over at Proper Fuel. Proper Hydrate is available now at properfuel.co. Such a powerful product. One of those things where athletes do not understand the role that hydration plays within their performance, and then how much salt plays into that. There are all of the electrolytes that we need within Proper Hydrate, but that main ingredient is salt. And one of the issues that we have with some of these supplements that have the higher sodium is they taste like shit and people don't want to drink them. So we tried to find that sweet spot of how high can we go? How can we make sure that this is an adequate dose for people and have it taste really good? I personally use this as my morning routine. You can do the whole thing where you put literal salt water into a cup and do the lemon and all that, and it doesn't taste so great and it's kind of annoying. Now what I do is I take that shaker bottle out, scoop of Proper Hydrate, put the water in it, shake it up, chug it, and I am completely changing my energy levels throughout the day. And the cool thing is N=1 experiment. My stress levels in terms of my HRV and all that are much smoother throughout the day and much lower when I do that. If you're a serious athlete, we do that in the morning. We do that to replenish after a long training session, and you will literally completely change the way that you work out. And we know how hard all of you work. So the ability to make something like that happen with a few shakes of the bottle and a drink is much nicer than, say, the cube test on the C2 bike. So Proper Hydrate is live right now, and you can save by using the code word Misfit at properfuel.co. Once you're done with that, you head to misfitathletics.com, you sign up for phase 2, we're good to go. All right, back to the show. So the tagline for the 2023 season is what matters most is how well you walk through the fire. For anybody new listening to this podcast, didn't listen to the phase 1 podcast, what I was really going for in that is almost like go get in the fire on purpose and stay in it, because when you come out the other side, you're going to be better, right? We have all these opportunities to do that throughout the season, and the, sort of going through the motions is one version of it. Some people go sit in the fire and sitting there a little too long and they're dead. They don't come out the other side at all.
Or they're like sitting in a warm lake and they think that that's the same thing.
Well,
and
yes.
It's not.
Yeah. We have a whole podcast coming up on training partners, and what the point of them is, especially on the side of the digital training partner. I haven't eaten in 3 days, so you guys might need to carry this one a little bit.
Got it.
Cup's full of bone broth, right?
What's that?
That cup's full of bone broth, right?
No, it's not.
Shame.
I don't get bone broth until tonight.
Nice.
Yeah.
How about crab rangoons?
Yeah, I'm fasting and I get a text. I get a meme from Sherb at 6:41 a.m. of a crab rangoon. That's fucked up, especially for celiac and fat. That ain't right. I forgot those existed.
Fuck, they're so good though.
Imagine frying cream cheese. Holy shit, so good. All right,
I gotta go.
phase 2.
God damn it.
What is important about this podcast is letting you guys know what is coming up, but then also what these progressions actually look like and how you can start to connect the dots. I'm going to ask you guys a question. If you were to deadlift heavy, clean up your clean, back squat for speed, heavy power clean, lunge, and front squat as your bias, do you think you're setting yourself up to peak your squat clean in the following 7 weeks?
I would hope so.
Fuck yeah, I hope so. God.
Right? Yeah. I mean, we're pulling from the floor. We're doing all, I mean, you could be a leverage lifter. You could be like butts on the ground in your first pull.
Checking all
like
these bases, every single one of
every
those
single
athletes.
one of them. And that's how we program. And that one seems super obvious, but this is 27 weeks long for open type athletes. And it's closer to like mid 30s for semifinals and games level athletes. You know, their comp block one's going to, you know, look a little bit different, but, so high CNS clean is what we are sort of peaking on within phase 2. Now, major difference, something that we used to do in the past, something that we got away from, watching what happens with an athlete when they crush semifinals, crush the games, but can't go to that place with the 1 rep max. Unfortunately, especially at semifinals, you could just miss out because you're not lifting heavy enough. So you are going to be peaking with 14 sessions of cleaning instead of 7. Obviously, that is a very big difference, and it is much, much, much closer to what an actual Olympic weightlifter would do. This program is very much an Olympic weightlifting program. So let's say you clean a house, delete one. Delete one of those and the progression will still work. You're basically just making a jump 5% instead of 2.5.
This is the same conversation we had with the deadlift in this current phase with the, you know, priming yourself by pulling a heavy single ahead of your percentage work. This is the exact same thing.
Yeah, if you're a Haas and you're frying your CNS every week.
What's the point? You know, you're going to feel good for the first couple of weeks of the phase, but then are you dragging weeks 3 through 7 and not getting what you could from the other parts, components of the fitness program that we have here ahead of you? So again, make that assessment and ask yourself, does it make sense to do this, or do I need to double down a little bit more time on the C2 bike and in my running shoes as opposed to, you know, just cleaning again?
Likely.
The skill-based lift is the back squat. What does that mean? Well, it means we're doing that, but that you might be in for quite a few back squats in phase 3. We'll just float that out there. This is my favorite skill-based phase in terms of the back squat that I've written. And one of the things that we did is we gave reference ranges for percentages. Please use your athlete IQ. That is not the point of these pause back squats. The point of these pause back squats is, you know, I'm going to have DJ Sherb play the virtuosity track here in a second, but the whole point is these beautiful no bounce back squats, making sure that you are moving the way that you want to once it gets heavy. And you get the opportunity to, I mean, I feel like Hunter week 1 is like, or week 2 is like 24 perfect reps, something like that.
Yep.
That is a tall task in terms of virtuosity. Doing the common uncommonly well.
Yes.
That's what I want. You will completely change. You'll change your fucking life. I won't even say you'll change your squat or your clean or whatever. You will change everything if every rep that you do is thoughtful the entire phase. So the reason I bring that up is because some people, you know, they have a super stressful job. You know, we got medical students, we got all these different people. They do not want to go to the gym and fucking make some wild guess about how much weight they're supposed to be lifting. I pay you guys, you tell me how much to lift. But again, fast twitch versus slow twitch, the positioning that you're getting in, midline stability, like this would be a very, personally for me, would be a very low percentage because I, you know, always relied on the bounce and the fast twitch. If I was to try to do 24 reps at 64%, I would die. So just really, really be mindful. Use reference ranges. You will get more used to it. There's no shame in under-guessing for a set, adding weight, over-guessing for a set, dropping weight, that sort of thing. Adjust on the fly as you go. But I can't say this enough. These pause back squats should be fucking beautiful.
So we talked about this at the affiliate level, not the back squats particular, but just like weightlifting in general. And every time you get a chance to move a barbell, you have the opportunity to move one step closer to being a better lifter or one step further away from it. So that's how I would tell someone to think about a skill lift is like, even when you're warming up with the empty bar, maybe you got like 25s on each side and that's whatever, 3% of your back squat max. Every rep that you do is an opportunity to get one step closer to having the success that you want to see in your own lifting program, whether that's your getting your back squat heavier, or you want your back squat to translate to your clean, or you want a stronger midline, or you want to figure out your balance in the movement or improve your mobility. Every time you go to the gym and you do one of these skill-based lifts, or really any lifts for that matter, you have the opportunity to take one step closer or one step further away. And if you're in it, you're aware of what you're doing, and you know what you're doing, you now have the best opportunity to make that one step going forward as opposed to one step going backwards.
And like, we're probably not going to see a pause back squat in competition, right? That'd be a nightmare.
Not even a back squat.
Not even barely even a back squat. If you are somebody who's back squat, if you have to ask if it's below parallel or not, I swear to God, it's not. If you're
Don't get this kid fired up, guys.
You're gonna get me fired up. You're gonna get me fired up.
The affiliate. What's your
back
saying?
squat?
You're squatting,
if you got to ask if it was below parallel, you weren't squatting. You were just having fun.
I like that one too. Yeah, just having fun.
It's like use the fact that it's the skill lift as the opportunity. Go like I tell our affiliate athletes, like especially when it's the skill lift, like I want you squatting as low as you physically safely can to develop strength through that full range of motion. Again, if you claim to be a competitor or following a competitive CrossFit program and you have to guess whether your squat was below parallel or not, you got some serious fucking work to do. And it starts with
I love it. I fucking love it.
Fire. I don't give a shit. I'll call you out if you're.
Can confirm.
Tag me on Instagram with a back squat that toes the line on at Misfit Athletics at Hunter Should. Stand by for an Instagram DM. Carry on.
We should probably move on from the back squat before this room burns down.
Flip that table over.
This next one is a lie. It's not true at all. The speed work is strict press and bench press. Some of the work in the strict press and bench press is speed work. The old Russian saying, to press, you must press.
Frankly,
what they
it
mean
should be all speed work.
Right. What they mean by that is the only way to get better at pressing is a lot of pressing volume. They tried everything. They tried steroids and 9-hour naps and 7x1s and
I'm gonna get on that program.
6x800s and
steroids and 9-hour naps.
They don't. Dude, you go back and look at the schedule for one day of the Bulgarian lifters. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's like 7x1 snatch, rest 3 hours.
They did not put how many cc's of Anavar, though, were in their diet. I think they just sprinkled it on their cereal.
Everything.
So you are going to be strict pressing and bench pressing on the same day, twice a week. So you're going to do both of those. I think, this is tough. So you got gym bros who want their bench press to go up. We all know that. Sherman and I and Ted, the allure of the football bench press, it's never going to leave.
No.
It's never going to leave. Sherb will sacrifice his entire rib cage for a 275 bench press.
To impress the ladies at 275. They're so impressed.
But I think the sticking point and it's like, I don't know. Is it demasculating? Hey, what's the word? Emasculating. See, you guys got me.
Nap, kid. You need a crab rangoon.
I need a large set of rangoons right now. I would crush this podcast.
All right, I'm ordering them.
If I had some rangoons. It's emasculating when you're in a gym and somebody strict presses like 70 more pounds than you, right? That's a weird kind of lift. Hunter? Now,
I wouldn't.
I used to be able to say this. We don't bear crawl everywhere. There are people on the internet. I don't know if you guys have seen any of this stuff, but there's dudes on day 300 of only walking on all fours.
I've heard of that.
He can fucking cruise too. It's creepy.
Is he identifying?
And he's got like
Tim Roth in Planet of the Apes.
He plays too many video games vibe to him, but he runs around on his all fours. It's fucking crazy. Anyways, so this doesn't apply to him. Whoever you are, you can stay pressing slow, and you're probably getting enough slow twitch work and crawling everywhere. Everyone else,
gym challenge.
If you're following that program,
everyone else,
DM me.
You C2 bike and you run and you row and you front squat and you lunge and you walk around all fucking day. You stand. You are constantly facilitating, growing, fostering, supporting slow twitch musculature in your lower half. That's why when you are squatting, it is a question of would I like to walk through the fire or drop this barbell right now? When you're pressing, it's like, it doesn't give a fuck how much you want it. It's not going to happen if you don't have, if you don't have your lower half involved in your core to a certain extent. So long rant, the best way, the absolute best way, and this is for fast twitch and slow twitch, is to do the 10x3 work with the strict press to get your strict press to go up. It is low percentage work. I'm telling you right now, another virtuosity thing, it is really hard to stay focused on pressing as fast as you possibly can, and then on the way down, winding your elbow in to get a nice stacked shoulder again, and then pressing as hard as you can for 10 sets for 30 reps, especially if you're going to take the actual time to rest 3 minutes, as a long session for a CrossFitter to press 30 times at a light weight. It will completely change how much you can press and your stamina. So just trust us on that one. Everything else is very standard, sort of it's heavy bench press, so it's accessory press, whatever. The other stuff, very straightforward. You're going to get stronger and more stable in your shoulder, all that good stuff. But if you are worried about your strict press for whatever reason, they throw CrossFit Total up at semifinals and you're like, oh shit, I'm fucked. You can't let stuff like that happen. So just 10x3 with speed is so important.
Just another nod to doing less, but doing less better. Like, this is another thing we're going to hear about it come the beginning of phase 2. We were like, all right, so you want me to warm up for 15 minutes, do all my activation, then strict press for 45 minutes, and then cool down?
Yeah, that is what we want you to do.
That's what I was hoping for.
Exactly
Thank you, Hunter. That's what I was hoping you would jump in and say that. Thank you. Moving on.
I got to check something, so you guys keep talking.
Yeah, if you need, and the speed work idea is brought to you by, the strongest gym on the planet, Westside Barbell. So if you're unfamiliar, do a little bit of Googling, a little bit of research. Many of you have probably heard of the conjugate method, the maximal effort method. It's all kind of built off the same concept, but strongest athletes in the world are using as little as like 30 to 40% of their 1 rep max and standing that bitch up, or pressing it, bench pressing, deadlifting, whatever, as fast as they can. Speed is strength. Force equals mass times acceleration. When we're putting a program like this out there, we want acceleration of that load.
Truth. Quick note, that progresses to the push press in phase 3 and then push jerk, split jerk later on in the season. So strong. Goodness. And stable and
thoughtful of us,
all that good stuff. All right. The general physical preparedness, GPP, lift is deadlift. What does that mean? That means that we take all of these other things that we're talking about in terms of either high CNS, skill, speed. We rotate through those through the entire phase. And it's this like, I'm going to go to a local comp week 7, and I'm ready for fucking anything in terms of deadlift. They might ask me for high rep. They might ask me to do, I don't know, like that old school workout. Remember the deadlift burpee at the games?
Oh yeah, the 5 rounds of 5.
Yeah, you literally needed to be able to deadlift fast.
Oh yeah, that was a dead sprint for like 3 minutes.
So we rotate through that. We have speed work. You guys know what the drop sets look like with the PAP afterwards, where you're jumping in the air. We've done the tempo work in the past. You guys really seem to like it. Never mind. I'm not even going to call it out. It works, and you guys do a good job with it. Nice work. It's back. The library reset reps are new, and there's 2 reasons for this. One, if you are trying to get better at a 1 rep max deadlift and you're always just lifting the first one with terrible form and then bouncing the rest of them once you get organized, that can be an issue. Also, we just finished the high CNS deadlift. So one of the ways that we can say we want you to go heavy, but not too heavy, or just obliterate your central nervous system, is by saying you're going to reset every single rep. We saw it a little bit at the CrossFit Games. It was tested at the affiliate level with some really good success. So your library reset reps mean that you are going to deadlift normally. You are going to slowly lower the bar so that it does not make a sound. That's where the library comes in. You're going to take your hands off, put them back on, and then deadlift again.
Again, we did this. We're actually just wrapping up as we're recording this, the phase at the affiliate level where we did force that. And part of the reason we forced it at the affiliate level is because athletes, like you said, tend to, everybody knows what that feeling is for that first rep, and they lower the bar. They're able to utilize that stretch reflex as the bar touches the ground. Second and third rep is usually a lot easier than the first rep. great. We're getting rid of that for you guys. We're forcing you not to make it harder specifically, but this is forcing you to regain tension on every single rep rather than just kind of relying on that stretch reflex. Hopefully you get into a good enough position on the first rep and then can nail the next few reps. It's like
test retest built into every set.
Yeah. And K-Star says it best, basically, if you enter kind of the movement tunnel in a poor position, you cannot regain a good position until you kind of reset yourself. So making sure that you're, you have the awareness, maybe even more importantly, to make sure that you're in a good position when you have to set up for a deadlift, and then apply that to the open when it's like, hey, 21, 15, 9, 315 deadlifts after you did 45 reps at 225, and it's like, it turns out I need to do singles for this. And after 4 or 5 singles, because you were in a dog shit position, your back blows up, you can't finish the workout. That's a pretty common thing we see with folks, especially with that, for whatever reason, that deadlift, that movement.
It also forces you to the elaborate deadlift specifically forces you to the entire movement. So many athletes are doing half of the work they need to get better at deadlifts. But what I mean by that is they lift the bar up, cool, locked it out, and just let go of it. Like, think about how strong your back squat would get if you just went to the bottom of your squat, someone placed a bar on your shoulders and stand up.
You're doing a fucking RDL with 400 instead of 200.
Exactly. So like the eccentric is one of the most effective ways. That's why negatives are such an awesome thing. But and again, you don't need to do maybe a perfect negative here, but you need to control the bar to the floor because the eccentrics where a large amount of the strength adaptation occurs. So if you're someone that doesn't normally do that, I don't let anybody basically at either affiliate now drop the barbell from the top. And I'm like, do you not want to be strong?
I like asking athletes if they hate being strong.
Yeah.
You hate being strong? Yeah, I do too. I just drop the bar every time. Yeah. I don't know if you're gonna get to the. I don't know if you're gonna get. Come take our class. Come take my class. It's fun.
I get to everything, but since I'm a few Rangoons short, I'll let you jump in.
I was just gonna say. So keep in mind for those of you who are going to be doing the deadlifting work, we are like on. I don't know, are we going into week 8 now of the 20-week deadlift progression? So there's the in-workout deadlift portion. So we're still building from that. So just make sure that you're taking care of your, whether it's low back, glutes, hamstrings, that sort of thing, because we are still continuing to put that volume deadlift work in those Metcons once a week. And that is part of a progression as well. And then when you obviously tie that in with GPP deadlifting, some weeks will be really heavy, some weeks will be speed work, volume work, whatever. Just make sure you're taking care of yourself because
it'll creep on you if you don't.
There's more than one deadlift session in a week can start to beat you up.
Truth. In WOD lifting, the overhead squat, everyone's favorite or least favorite movement, very polarizing movement.
I'm excited about this.
What's great about taking a polarizing movement and then personalizing it is we can write workouts for the masses. So you got to think that it can be challenging when you have something. High rep deadlift is another one that's like that. But with the overhead squat, it's really challenging to say, okay, Hatchet and MFT athletes that don't have a remote coach, how do we get you better at something that a lot of people aren't very good at without just generalizing and saying, hope you know how to scale. We do that through percentage work. So you're going to be tested on the overhead squat in terms of what we think your capacity should be as an MFT or Hatchet athlete. And then you are going to get to personalize it for 5 weeks and then jump back in and see what happened, what got better.
And we're going to test you. It's kind of nice, hopefully either through the phase 0 testing, or if you did the quarterfinals last year, you should have a pretty accurate 1 rep max overhead squat, kind of a true out of the rack, get it overhead squat at one time. We ask for both. Some of it's going to be based off of your 1 rep max snatch, especially if we tell you hey, these overhead squats are taken from the floor. But other days we are basing it off of your 1 rep max overhead squat, and we'll say hey, take it out of a rack, take it off blocks or whatever, but you need to know that information. And if you don't, I think it's one of those lifts where it's not so demanding on your CNS that you couldn't test that at some point throughout test week or kind of substituting something out and to find that information. But we, again, are assuming that you went through phase 0, you have that information, or you just have it from quarterfinals or something like that so that you can accurately base your overhead squat work on that.
I think it's important to think about the the in-wide lifting, the overhead squat, a lot like you talked about with the skill work with the back squat. Like, are you going to be able to do this movement and have it translate to your ability to do more reps in a Metcon, which is typically how overhead squat is typically tested in our sport? Ask yourself, am I moving the right way? Or does the 70%, that is kind of the guideline for everybody else, maybe too much for the type of athlete I am? Maybe I'm a fast twitch athlete and it's muscle endurance, and I know that I'm going to burn out because I have a crazy big snatch or overhead squat and I can't do that for that high of a rep. This is one of those things where I would encourage an athlete, and honestly, I have conversations with my remote clients about, yeah, I know it's the 70%, but like, what does that actually mean for a number for you? And then ask yourself, looking at the stimulus, does that number correlate with something I can do well, or should I go lighter so I actually can get better at this movement? So similar to the way I like to think about that skill back squat, I would ask my athletes, you know, you're doing the in-wad lifting and you look at the overhead squat and maybe that percentage is just a touch too heavy or just isn't something that's realistic for you. Like, you might be someone who's awesome from jerking the back rack and the bar, jerking it up overhead and doing an overhead squat, and you can do that in the perfect situation, but you're not as good under fatigue. This is an opportunity for you to do even further personalization and like, be more concerned about getting better at the movement than how you stack up against your peers. And what's great about in-wad lifting is there's so much variance across the entire community that like Hunter and I might be using a similar weight, but have very different objectives in the workout. And while we'd want to race because that's fun and competitive, that might not be the right call for you on that given day because you both have different things that you need to be working on inside the in-wad lifting workouts.
Tiny sliver of devil's advocate. You can stick at the percentage and treat the movements surrounding it in a different way. So you can look at it and say, I'm trying to get better at overhead squat today. And I'm going to, you know, take more like a cardio, sustained pacing mentality into, you know, maybe it's, you know, a ski and then a burpee or something like that. And you're not going to torch yourself and then do it. On the other side, you might look at it and say you're 60 or 70. It's like, I can do this all day. Fucking bury yourself and then prove that that's true. Because we keep seeing at these competitions, high level competitions, you know, a lot of times in a final, they do a monostructural movement, gymnastics movement, and they finish with a big set of shoulder to overhead, overhead squat, front squat, deadlift, whatever it is. That's one of the reasons why we do this. We want you to know what happens when, you know, you get punched in the face and then it's like, okay, here's your barbell. There's the finish line. Maybe you're going to the CrossFit Games. Maybe you're not.
One last thing I'll say on the overhead squat is that it's obviously a massive mobility dependent movement. If you're somebody who really struggles positionally, until you rectify mobility deficiencies, you will struggle with the movement. If you're somebody whose elbows, you know, shoulders point down to the ground as you're overhead squatting, your elbows are bent, that barbell's resting, has 3 points of contact, one on each hand, the other one on your head, like, or your hip, you know, your hips are tight, you struggle to get below parallel, you have to address that, whether that means sitting in the bottom of an overhead squat for 5 minutes a day. That's something that Tony, bless your heart, sorry, I'm going to keep doing that I'm not sorry. Yeah. I don't give a shit. But it is like, that's something that you have to address. We don't talk about it probably as much as we should, but just being in the right positions, like the overhead squat can be the easiest movement in one of the easier movements in CrossFit if you're able to put the barbell directly over your center of gravity.
It made no sense because I had no stamina or like.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. But take the time, like identify that if that is you, like dig into the internet, dig into the Misfit Athletics archives and figure out what you need to do to fix that.
If you hate a position, it means you need to do it more. Yep. It's easy as that.
We're going to rename this podcast the in-wad lifting overhead squat podcast because I have one more anecdote. Sometimes from the floor, you need to clean and jerk your overhead squat to use it. And if you're that person that can't get into good positions, oh boy, not fun, not excellent. You need that skill.
FaceTime me in so I can watch.
You need that skill. You need that skill. You need that skill. Semifinals, CrossFit Games athletes, you can have your season ruined by something dumb like that because you weren't able to do a more narrow grip overhead squat. All right. We got 2 non-mandatory lifts. We have the Snatch and we have the RDL. I'm going to go RDL first. The RDL can be a throwaway movement where you just go through the motions and make sure that you're, maybe more of like a stability based kind of thing, or it can be a big strength builder, especially for people who struggle to activate their posterior chain. So we've got a lot of videos on it. We've got a lot of good videos on it, and when done right, and done as a progression, so not like lighting yourself on fire week 1. You got 6x10 for 7 weeks. Think about where you'd like to be at 7 weeks and do linear progression to get to that spot.
That's one of those movements that'll fuck you up. You can, the problem is that everybody listening can do a lot more than you need to for week 1.
Yeah.
And when you do it,
Right.
and when you can't walk the next like week,
Sure.
you'll know why. Just
The weight you think is
need to-
appropriate probably belongs in the middle of the phase with the goal of getting beyond that and starting below it. That's typically
It's something you and I have been doing with the lunges. Like, we started a weight because you're going to be doing this because lunges are a weakness of mine for the entire season. You're going to start at what feels like a pedestrian weight. And in fact, I got heckled at camp because of what I was starting at. And I was just like, I've got like a year
I was
of
doing
this
the lunges
left.
with him and I was heckling him.
Yeah, so it's like, again, understand this is a long progression. It's a long season. If you jump too far ahead too soon, you're going to basically leave yourself no room to continue progressing.
Non-mandatory snatch. So it's exciting for me to say this. We are trying something new that I'm excited about. Because it's non-mandatory and because we are following a year-long progression, you went from I believe phase 1 was a 3-rep max snatch test.
Yep.
Phase 2, non-mandatory, is a 2-rep max. So we're literally just trying to up that number a little bit and hit it for 2. And then we're going back to higher rep. One of the things that is challenging in the sport is when you get faced with a workout where every time you get back to the barbell, it's pretty fucking heavy, and you need to know, how long does it take me to do 10 reps at this crazy weight? And the cool thing about that from a programmer's perspective is if I'm programming a test, I know that takes longer, which means I know I'm allowed to make it heavier. So the way that we're working these two ideas in together is you're going to do something to the effect of every 30 seconds for 2.5 minutes, 1 squat snatch. So it is still a set of 5 like you would see in a non-mandatory snatch phase, because we just want you to snatch. We want you to get into better positions. But we can start to flirt with that weight a little bit more and start to really make sure that those are excellent reps and gather data on those super
I was
heavy.
gonna say the data collection is important. It's when,
Yes.
hey, like open workout, what was it? With heavy, it was like
They've done the
30,
clean.
30 snatches, was like burpee.
Oh, we did in
snatch.
Hawaii last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one from
Ascending,
like
bottom line is
14,
you got like
13.
that kind of moderately heavy barbell
Yeah.
for moderate to high rep. It's
Yep.
like, how long does this take? It's like, well, I don't know. How can you do 1 snatch every 10 seconds for in perpetuity, every 15 seconds, every
Yep.
12 seconds? Like, how much information can you get? This is a really good piece to find that out. And it's certainly not a Metcon session, but it's
Right.
like you should start to get the idea of how, what that demand looks like on your energy system.
Historically speaking, that's something we see in some level of the stage of the competition ahead of the CrossFit Games, is you're going to have to move a light barbell, then a moderate barbell, and a heavy barbell, and you need to be able to move the same from start to finish. And what a lot of athletes end up doing is they have a bastardized movement pattern early on because it's not heavy. It doesn't force them to move a certain way. And then when they get to the heavy barbell, because they aren't forced to move a certain way early on, that poor motor pattern carries over to the heavier barbell. And all of a sudden it's like, I'm expending 130% of the energy I normally use to do this barbell because I started in a poor position and I haven't been able to fix it.
Yeah,
Kinda like you're
or
talking
it's
about the movement
a
tunnel.
ladder exactly like this. It's like every 30 seconds you got to do another rep. It's
Yep.
like, well, that's not enough time for a 1 rep max. It's like, oh shit, it's a test.
All right. Accessory, as usual, lift, carry, hold. There is an opportunity sometimes for, let's say there's an RDL in lift number 2. That's not mandatory. There might not be the heavy lift within the accessory. I bring up the lift, carry, hold because we get a lot of people asking about strength bias, trying to get a little bit bigger. Mandatory lift, non-mandatory lift, and accessory in its own session. That's how you strength bias. We have weakness templates on the site. So if you're like, I want my non-mandatory lift to be this other thing that we're maybe not focusing on as much, that's not as biased, don't worry, it'll still show up in, Metcons and intervals and all that stuff. But own session, completely on its own. And, small nuances that you would have got from the recovery podcast that we did recently. Don't use temperature, don't bring your body temperature way down. Don't get in you can get in the sauna after that and save your protein shake for 45 minutes to an hour after you're doing that. I'm going to let you guys, we're going to skip ahead. I'm going to let you guys talk a little bit about the Metcon and skill biases. for wall walks and muscle ups for Metcon and interval.
All right. Well, since the movement I programs first, I'll go first. The test for the phase has some pretty big doses of wall walks relative to what we've seen in the competition level. You know, thinking back to last year's open workout with the 3, that's much different than what you're going to see come test week for phase 2. But
Except they kicked everybody in the nuts the first year with 54 of them.
yeah, can confirm my nuts were kicked in pretty hard.
Did you even do 54? No, just fucking with you.
I actually did I?
Didn't it have
I didn't get the double unders
unders
done.
with it?
Yeah, I didn't finish the double unders though. That's too many double unders. It's like, I don't know, 500 too many, and there's like 540 in the
Beefy
workout.
Round
But the idea behind the wall walks for the upcoming phase here is that we want to test where you are currently in your capacity, and then we're going to give you strategies to how to improve that capacity across the entire phase. So one of the things you're going to notice is that you're going to have a week of a workout with wall walks in it. And then the following week, you're going to have the opportunity to practice the skill outside of a Metcon, but with the idea of, hey, here's a chunk of wall walks that hopefully you can start to get more comfortable with. And you'll do that a couple of times before ending with a larger set of wall walks ahead of an essentially bigger set than you'll have to do in the test workout, to then hopefully desensitize you to the fact that you can move quickly in the smaller sets, and then you can just stay moving on the larger sets. And again, for a lot of people, when it comes to a movement like a wall walk, once you've dialed in the technique of how you're going to step into the wall and step back out, it's just reps. You need time to get better at this movement. I think of a lot like the old weakness warm up with the bar facing burpees. Like the first couple of times you do it, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to die. That's my whole training day. I just did that. I don't feel like I have any room for any more fitness today. But all of a sudden you're on week 2 or 3 and you're like, I just did those in like 3 minutes and they weren't that bad. I think of the wall walk very similar here. Once you've dialed in your technique, you start to desensitize yourself to these larger chunks. And then when you come back around to the test at the end of the phase, you've done sets that are far larger than you'll have to do in any one section of the workout in the test. And that should make the test feel a little bit more smooth, as opposed to like, oh my God, I had to climb Mount Everest, come back down and then climb it again 2 more times. Like it just becomes a thing that you're now desensitized to. So when you're going through this phase, hopefully you've been doing your homework when they've been showing up, you're being a little bit more comfortable with wall walks. Now it's time to say, can I be consistent? Essentially very similar to the way we just talked about the snatching. Can I do one wall walk every 8 seconds, every 10 seconds? And then can I turn that from 8 to 10 seconds to 6 to 8 seconds, then 4 to 6 seconds across the entire phase? And next thing I know, I'm able to do 30 to 50 of them in a much faster clip than I could previously.
Similar idea. The muscle up test is going to be found in the interval, the day 3 interval. And basically what the idea was is it's a salt bike, muscle up, and then rest. And it's a very manageable dose. It's absolutely a trap. Oh, there you go. There's your hint. It's a trap. It's a trap if you don't know what your capacity is. If you basically we've given you a very manageable dose of calories, 12 calories for the men, 9 for the ladies, and then a set of muscle ups, followed by really the nuances in how little rest you get. How quickly can your body kind of regenerate and still push the bike, but then more importantly, how quickly can you hop up to the rings and do a set? So basically you've got descending reps of muscle ups. It's a pretty manageable overall volume. It's not like we're pushing you for 50 or 60 reps. It's more about figuring out what your capacity is on the rings when you're breathing hard, which is obviously a much better expression of your capacity in the sport. And then the skill, same idea. It's kind of every other week. It's like, here's the test. Next week, we've got it in the skill work. The following week, it's back in a Metcon. The following week, it's in skill work. And those skill sessions, actually every session has a similar kind of descending style of muscle ups. And I think that's a really important kind of point, especially in the skill work when we're saying, hey, 5 unbroken muscle ups, 4 unbroken muscle ups, 3, 2, 1. And we're saying, hey, rest as little as you need to do these sets unbroken. And I think that's another kind of opportunity for athlete IQ. Anytime it's like, you've got a set of, let's say 10 muscle ups. We saw that in quarterfinals last year, and it was pistols, GHDs, and sets of 10 muscle ups. Lots of athletes had to break those muscle ups up. Knowing how to do that is a really important skill. And more often than not, we're going to recommend that when you hop up for that first set of muscle ups, that should probably be the biggest set, right? We're not going to recommend, do 3 even sets, because that's not really how the upper body works, like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. So having kind of, we are dictating the sets that you need to do. And hopefully you can kind of extract some information from that while also building capacity on that movement for a good retest.
This workout and the notes that I gave Hunter to write it is based on, again, this ability that we have, that we care a lot about, to take multiple steps back and look at the entire landscape. The keep the Jay-Z references rolling. I used to give a fuck. Now I give a fuck less. The big sets of muscle ups are the sexy thing. We had the muscle up biathlon. We had the 15 into the squat clean ladder. There have been moments where if you had the gigantic set of muscle ups, maybe a little bit more fast twitch, maybe a little bit more shoulder stability, mobility, whatever it was, that was a big deal. It was a really big thing. Watch what happens in muscle up workouts when they're thoughtfully written. You get your people who go out hot. We saw was it 21-15-9 at regionals, or was it 15-12?
Oh, you're right. 21-15-9.
Thrusters,
dumbbell snatch,
muscle up.
And it's so nerve-wracking for the athlete and hilarious to watch for the coach. You get someone that goes out and is just like, watch this, like 3-point stance, helmet on, shoulder pads on, sprints full speed into an oncoming Mack truck. And you're like, that was amazing. Now, because they were sprinting, the other competitors like, I'm going to lose by 6 minutes, and then they win by 9. That is so challenging as an athlete to watch other people do that, especially a lot of times those workouts begin with muscle ups. They begin with a big set, and the programmer and the coaches are like, this is great. Excellent. And the athletes are like, they're ahead. I'm fucked. It's over. So when we watch that, we're like, okay, what do I really want an athlete to be able to do, to prove, to learn how to do? And that is to repeat this, whether it's, I can't do anymore because I can't breathe. I can't do anymore because my grip is shot, or the dip is gone, whatever it is. You have to figure out what those things are, because it's way more important that you can continue to jump up and do manageable sets in this sport than it is to be the person that gets to post online that they can do 30 in a row.
Yeah, I mean, the perfect encapsulation of that was like, I think 2015 regionals, and Kenzie Riley just like was terrified of that workout. It was 16, terrified of that workout. And she was like, I'm going to come in last. I can't do that many muscle ups in a row.
Coach, do I have to do it unbroken?
And she did it. And like, I think she came in 3rd or 4th overall in that event.
The same thing happened was it 2 years ago, the online semifinal, when she accidentally qualified for the games?
Yeah,
and
she won
the muscle up workout.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's because she's so aware. Yeah, she's so aware of what her body can do.
With muscle up.
Yeah, she's fit. She understands what her line is. She stops before she crosses the red line, and basically her feet hit the ground and she like rebounds right up on the rings again. You're like, you rested? That's rest to her. That allowed her to keep going, and then that is really what you're looking to do here. Is like, when it comes to a test, what strategy maximizes your overall time? And for a lot of athletes, that means being maybe a bit more cautious in the front end so you can stay moving the entire time. All
right. You guys just talked about metcons and intervals. If we were going to talk about personalizing and biasing, this is a unique case, but it does happen enough. Fit people that suck at CrossFit, low athlete IQ, very high fitness level, don't know how to partition movements, don't know what pace should be on something. Sherb alluded to the run, burpee, box jump, push press workout. Okay, well, if it's whatever, 3 on, 3 off roughly, then shouldn't I be able to run at how hard I would run for 3 minutes? That is where the information begins. It is impossible to make burpee box jumps and push press, especially in that order, easier than going for a jog. It's just not going to fucking happen. You can slow down as much as you want, whatever. So if you are thinking kind of strong, kind of fuck around with these bitch work pieces, season rolls around, it's just, I don't know what the fuck is happening, do the metcons and intervals daily. Even if we tell you that you need to choose this other piece, that's for the masses. You are a unique case. Throw the other piece in the garbage, or just make sure that it's there. Also, 2 separate sessions. The metcon in one session as the first thing that you do, the interval in the other session as the first thing that you do. That's how you bias something. You go in and you do that, and maybe phase 2, phase 3, you've done it. You've taken a ton of notes. You've improved your athlete IQ. You can go back to the original plan. But if you suck at CrossFit and you're strong and fit and skilled, we got some fucking problems. Bias actual CrossFit. Get better at the sport. It's like the person that shows up with all the intangibles to football practice and just has no fucking clue what's going on.
Yeah, as a person who tries really hard in the offseason, gets really, really strong, really, really fit, and then is not good at the sport of football. It's like, well, maybe you need to spend more time running routes. Or
I have learned, though, that those people were probably just concussion averse.
Fair.
Yeah, I was going to liken that to...
If I run a 4.5 and I weigh 240, what happens when I hit somebody with my head?
I don't know. Let me know. Yeah, fun. Dead fun.
You good?
No, I was just going to say, you got to think about the Metcons and intervals as your sport-specific training.
Yep.
Like off-season hockey, you're doing a lot of dry land work, a lot of running, sprinting, all that sort of stuff. But if you don't get on the ice, then don't expect yourself to be good at hockey. Get strong with the lifting, get really fit, learn about your energy systems with your bitch work and your skill, build some of the skills with the skill work, but then you gotta play your sport to get better at it, and that's where the Metcons and intervals are.
Very true. All right, on to the monostructural work, also known as bitch work at misfitathletics.com. You have the anaerobic bias. I'm so happy for people to see what this feels like. The C2 bike is our anaerobic focus. Now, you just spent 7 weeks bike erg, maffetone, and aerobic and build pieces. I mean, you were put through the fucking ringer on this thing. And what that does for you is it gives you the opportunity to take that fitness that was floating over here that you already had, that you developed, that you work really hard on, and the ability to clear waste specific to the bike and bring them together and then find out what you can actually do on the bike. Because again, a lot of this stuff that we're doing is only going to show up every once in a while in the sport, but it would be very likely that you go to a competition and part of the classic triplet is not a rower or not a runner. It's the C2 bike. How do you go in and go hard on that and know what the fuck is going on? If there is anything where I'm asking you the bike is on, I promise you the bike is on fire. And you're going to if you sit on it, you're going to be walking through fire. It's so unique and special for a CrossFitter to be in that amount of physical pain without the matching heart rate until you make it well into it. So I'm just really interested to see what scores look like, if people have that athlete IQ and can understand where they go. Also, it's not a good athlete IQ in a test to just dog it and say I did it and now I'm going to get way better. That's also a fucking cop-out.
A cop-out, yeah.
So the cube test, 4x4, 4 minutes rest. How many calories can you get on the C2 bike? I'm telling you, it's special because of how unique it is. Obviously, all of the cube tests fucking suck. They hurt. They're super painful. The rowing one is nuts. But
it's easy.
It's different on the C2 bike, again, because of that localized muscle fatigue. And again, we talked about it before. You walk around all day, you do all these things. A lot of times this is a choice. And powering through and understanding that it was a choice is nice.
Yeah, I always liken to the, I think it's the old, maybe it's Josh Bridges used to say, it doesn't hurt that much worse to go just a little bit harder. I feel the same way about the C2 bike. Like, you're going to be uncomfortable, but you can probably push through it. The hard part is staying checked in and staying present. If, going to another analogy or another like pop culture thing, like the Fight Club thing, like stay present. Like, don't go to your happy place. You're not in the igloo with the penguin. You're like in the shit right now. Stay there present. Be aware of it, and then you're going to be able to call upon that information and how you feel when it actually matters. If you check yourself out and just go, I'll just close my eyes and hope 4 minutes is over soon, like, you're not going to get what you could get from this piece.
And that's what's so fascinating about that split, right? Like, if again, we use the idea of a threshold, or like you're on one side of the fence and there is the other, it's so fascinating that staying present and going 1 second per 500 faster feels easier than giving in, dropping a little bit, and panicking. It literally feels easier to go faster. Of course, you get 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. That's just bullshit if somebody says that. But like that, intensity is freedom, suffer, smile, endure, all that stuff. That's exactly what he's talking about. You like really stay in it, and the time just goes away. You start to stare at your split and I'm not doing what I want and I'm regressing and I'm allowing it to happen. You're going to feel a lot worse after that.
And if you struggle with that, find a friend, tell him to stand by your bike. And when he tells you you're having that moment of weakness, thinking
or
back
fucking warm up. Goodness
When
gracious.
you and I were in Amsterdam, we were doing that 3-minute bike piece. I think it was like 3 on, 3 off. We just traded rounds back and forth. Like the other person stood by the bike.
Yep.
First minute's kind of a freebie. You're feeling pretty good from your last round. But that middle minute is not fun. If you're not someone that's particularly tough right there, don't be afraid to ask one of your training partners, maybe someone you don't like losing to stand right over your shoulder and say, nope, don't drop it. Stay at that calorie.
And you can do it too.
And you can do it.
It's hard to convince yourself alone that you can do it. In that moment, you can almost always do it.
These cube tests are also just so important from an energy system perspective and how it translates to the sport of CrossFit. Like again, go back in your journal, like the recommendation, keep most of your Metcons in that short and medium time domain and light your hair on fire. That's where so much of the adaptation occurs.
Yep.
And this sort of thing, like that 4-minute time range, that really anaerobic kind of, you can go pretty hard, but like, there's that fine line like we talked about.
Yep.
This, you can get so much bang for your buck, especially when you are able to translate that over to a 4, 8, 10-minute Metcon in a quarterfinal or semifinal.
Aerobic bias ski erg. I got to watch 1.5 people test this. The half person didn't understand how the workout worked.
You cut him in half right after.
Got something out of it for sure. Hunter, you did this test.
Yep.
And you looked like you were having a hootin' and hollering time your last few segments there.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that it's literally AMRAP, or it's literally every 2-minute windows. You do 20/13 calories, add 1 every round until failure.
Yep.
How long did we talk about what the calories should be in conversions? And it's this many meters and it's this, and we want to make sure because it's aerobic, we get this volume. So how do we, it was a lot.
A few minutes.
But what comes out the other side of that, sitting in those meetings, is it was appropriate. It was a good test.
Yep.
And I don't know, you look like you're having fun.
I got the
the point.
Stimulus was achieved.
And obviously
that
that's
sucked too. I was so upset because it was like, when you're doing a death buy, it's like, oh, this is easy, up, and it's impossible, and I'm done. It was like, oh, this is easy. Like, oh, this is a little bit harder. Oh, this is a little bit harder. Fuck, this is still a little bit harder, but you can keep going. You can do that like 4 or 5 times.
You didn't get that death by grace period?
No, and I was like, it was like 40 minutes into this bitch, and I'm like, God fucking damn it, someone slice me in half. Let me be the half person.
Cut me in half.
Someone cut me in half.
Aerobic bias, we just alluded to, is the ski. So your Maffetone sessions will be on the ski. Really powerful tool that, brings us into an entirely different realm when it comes to that idea of not having any slow twitch. I don't know what your strokes per minute are during your math, but multiply that by the minutes, and that tells you how many reps you're getting. Now you don't need to bear crawl with the Dungeons and Dragons guy.
But maybe you want to. Maybe you want to.
I doubt it.
That dude does laps on the track. Anyways, you got to find this guy. You guys got to go find him.
Tell him to do
I feel like Ted would know.
Tell
where
him to
find
do
him.
phase 2.
He's
Misfit
on TikTok.
Athletic.
He's on
you follow
TikTok.
him on
Yeah,
TikTok
for sure.
So we're doing that, and we're biasing it in terms of actual aerobic sessions, and then you get a cube test in phase 3. Congratulations. The non-mandatory bitch work, something that we're carrying through all 4 phases, is that power output test, and then your ability to continue to choose which machine you send on if it's non-mandatory. The medicine is still coming. We have a mandatory send every single week. But we also have a non-mandatory send when you're like, oh, that's great, but this is actually the one that I just can't seem to figure out. You do the power output test. You see how much power you can truly generate. And then your ass handed to you on purpose. You literally bury yourself on purpose for an entire phase. And then you see if you can come out the other side. You're doing heavy lifts. You're doing, GPP always helps. You do the sends and you should be able to come out the other side. It's just one of those things. What gets measured gets managed. If you truly know what your power output looks like, you have a target other than how fast can I whip my head back and forth on an assault bike. So phase 2, the masters and the teens program. If you feel left out, we've been talking about you the entire time.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys want to allude to any specific differences, anything that's going to be different there, but the plan that we're trying to figure out, especially most importantly, phase 1 through 4, that 27-week progression, we can really sort of mix these concepts across programs. it's when the order of the season changes and how important, a certain level of competition is to the masses that we get the bigger and bigger changes. So comp block 1, 2, and 3, significantly different for them versus phases 1 through 4.
Yeah, the main difference for the teenagers is that, I really want all the teens who follow our programming to understand how much we prioritize the intensity of a piece. So you're going to notice there are fewer pick options for the teenagers relative to the older adults. Even though a teenager might feel like they have all this energy and all that free-flowing testosterone because they're young and virile and they're like ready to go, we want to set you up early on in your training age to understand that it's better to do things well than to do a lot of things. So the main difference for the teens as opposed to maybe the full blog followers, the Hatchet and MFTers, is that you're going to notice they're going to have far fewer pick options. And the idea behind that is so that you can really double down on the things you actually need to do. I think most days are 0 to 1. I think there might even be a day there's no picks. And the idea there is that you have a menu in front of you and you realize you have these 3 or 4 things you have to do for the day. I want you to do them to the best of your ability, allowing time for full warm up, activation, practicing the skill of the movement, doing the workout, cooling back down, and then doing it over again. Because again, if you're looking to set yourself up for a long trajectory or you have a big goal in mind, you need to start small and do things really, really well before you do a lot of things. And I think that is just a trap because of social media and what you think everybody else is doing. It can be very conflicting. You think that you're not doing enough when in fact it's the wrong problem. You're doing a bunch of things at like 75% and you're not getting the adaptation because you can't pour in 100% of your effort to each thing that you're doing.
I would almost always rather have an athlete who is a raw beginner come into our affiliate, take our beginners class so that I know that they're learning how to do things correctly than getting an athlete who's done CrossFit for 7 years but didn't maybe have the correct instruction to begin with, and they've got 7 years of poor movement patterns ground into their head, and it's just like, yeah, this is good enough. It's like, take the time for you youngsters out there who are listening. It's so much easier to go a little bit slower right now, and honestly, like, it's not even that long. It's not like you need like 10 years of just like, crawling before you can start getting better. Like if you learn how to move correctly now, you learn how to do these things correctly, and you get the right habits ground into your head now, it's going to make your athletic career so much easier. You're not going to have to worry about the things that me making fun of you for not squatting low enough or your barbell touching your head when you're doing an overhead squat. Like you can easily rectify those without even having to deal with the consequences now by just learning how to do things correctly.
The only real change I'd love to see for phase 2 is I'd like to see that Discord channel for teenagers have more than the one single person who wrote hello and I wrote hello back and then I never got a response back from that person. Sorry, teenagers. I don't know if you think Discord's not cool because you're not used to it, but it's actually an awesome resource and it's where I'd prefer to communicate with you all. So if you are following the teens program, drop a line in there. Let's get a community going inside Discord because, again, a lot of you will send me direct messages via social media, but you would benefit from having that community of other teenagers around you to push you and to know where you are relative to them because, again, not that comparison is the only thing that matters when it comes time to training, but it is good to know and exchange notes with other athletes who are trying to follow a similar pursuit, and that community is something that hasn't been developed on Discord, and I would love to see that change in phase 2.
The teens and masters programs produce the most successful in terms of percentage Misfit athletes in the world. 3 CrossFit Games podiums this year. 3 CrossFit Games podiums. So again, if it feels like we're not addressing it or we're leaving it towards the end, it's because it's a separate program that is so closely related that basically we come to the end and say, oh, here's the, a but or and or whatever, that sort of thing. It's, again, the most successful athletes that we have are in our teens and masters program. So it'd be great to see some of the new up and coming teen athletes. And I know that there's a competitive aspect to who follows what program within the masters community, but ours are the most successful. So why don't you come on over and join
the Discord channel's bumping too for the masters.
That is very true.
Masters community is really
Justin LaSala asking inappropriate questions. It's fantastic.
It's perfect.
It's entertaining.
We need more of it, actually.
Yeah, actually, I agree.
You can say those were your final thoughts.
They were.
Okay. Sherb, you're up.
I mean, I just want to go back to what you said at the beginning of the podcast, that these phases aren't necessarily like 7 weeks, erase everything, restart. It's continuing your education across the entire phase as you continue to progress in your fitness level. So as you are setting out on phase number 2, take time to go back into your journal or wherever you track your workouts and literally read through just about every single thing that you did and ask yourself, you know, something you and I talk about, what could have been done differently? How would you do it differently next time? And how can you remember to make sure that when you do this thing a second or third or fourth or 100th time, that you're going to actually do it a little bit different way? Because again, making the same mistakes over and over again is like the definition of insanity. We want to get better, which means we need to spend time doing the proper reflection. So take all that information from phase 1, sit down at the dinner table, literally look through all of your notes, ask yourself questions, think about how you went through things, where you could improve. And then as you're listening to this podcast, basically set out a new roadmap for what these next 7 weeks can do for you. And if you do that, you will reap a lot more from these 7 weeks of training than just going like, all right, those last 7 weeks were fun. Let's do 7 weeks of something different. Like continue that progression throughout the season. And you'll notice that you stack more wins, you gain more knowledge, which means when you're ready to be tested at the open, quarterfinal, semifinal, or games level, you're more prepared.
We're not going to be able to say it for too many more phases, but we are still early enough in the season that it's a great time to jump on board, especially if you're coming from a different program, you're looking for something a little bit different. Maybe you like something that we heard, or you took offense to something that I told you. That's fine, but you can jump on board, adopt kind of the mentality of absorbing the information that we're telling you, dig into the podcast, dig into the YouTube channel, kind of see how all the entire ecosystem ties together to help kind of create the best athlete that we can. And again, it's phase 2. So we've already had one full training phase, but for context, most of our games level athletes are really just getting back into normal training and not even at kind of full bore intensity yet. So there's still plenty of time left before, we're kind of in the thick of the season for you to get in. Still not, you don't have to smash your head into the wall for the next 7 weeks. You can still intelligently ramp yourself up for success in the coming couple phases before we get into kind of the meat of the season.
Phase 2 begins Monday, October 3rd at misfitathletics.com. You can sign up and get 2 weeks for free. So you listen to this entire podcast, you're like, I'm kind of getting pulled in. I might, take a thimble of the Kool-Aid. I want to check this thing out. You can do that risk-free. You can
think of a thimble for fingers like his.
I need a thimble.
Unreal. What I like to talk about with this stuff. So we have my God.
Sorry. All right.
He's to the rope. Let's go. Let's kill us.
You are entering weeks 8 through 14 of a 27-week progression. Really important to think about it from that perspective. New athletes. Here's the way that I explain it to our coaches and our remote athletes and anyone who will fucking listen, is this concept of the 50-50 agreement, something that we guarantee for you. If you are willing to take that fucking Husafel bag that they had at the games and go up those stairs, if you're willing to walk 10 miles with that thing, we'll meet you. We'll walk 5. We'll meet you halfway and help you with that. If you're willing to walk 1,000,000 fucking miles, we're going to walk 500,000 miles to get there. We are always willing to meet you at your ability to put the effort in. And that effort is in the gym, it's recovery, it's athlete IQ, it's paying attention to the podcast and the YouTube videos, all of that stuff. But what separates us beyond even all of the other stuff that we put out there is the 3 of us will meet you halfway. We will get half of this work done for you so that you can show up and be the best athlete that you can be. And the earlier in the season that you join us, the better. You can always join us. Variance is always our guiding principle. We love GPP. Sherb's the second biggest Kool-Aid drinker I've ever met in my whole life.
Who's the first?
Yeah, Luca.
Fair. That's fair. That's fair.
So misfitathletics.com, Monday, October 3rd, 2 weeks for free.
Sign up.
Did we do it?
Did it.
We done.
All right, ladies and gents, thank you for tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. And thank you to our show sponsor, exclusive show sponsor, Proper Fuel. You can head to properfuel.co. You can scroll down, click on this sexy little black and blue bottle, click it. You can buy it. Proper Hydrate is here, your complete electrolyte solution. And you can use the code word Misfit to save on that. All right, see you next week.